Wendy, great to see you.
Great to see you, and thanks for having me, Ed. I'm looking forward to our chat.
It's going to be a great chat. I've been looking forward to talking with you for a long time. We connected in LinkedIn a few months ago about this topic, and ever since, I've been wanting to bring you on the show, and I'm glad we finally made it happen. Before we get to the topic of today, why don't you start with a little bit of background? So, start with today, what you do, what kind of clients you work with, what you do for them, maybe a little bit about how you got here and how long you've been doing this, just
Okay.
so listeners have a little bit of context.
Sure. So I live in Montreal, and I have a mix of American and Canadian clients. And I call myself a bit of a fence straddler because my background is in journalism. I have a journalism degree. I worked for many years in television news and production, but I do a lot of content marketing, brand storytelling, and copywriting as well. And I just make sure that my niches don't really overlap. So I work with a lot of different types of clients. I know that the trend today is to niche down, and I have done exactly the opposite of that. I do have a handful of industries that I work for regularly, things that I cover. I cover a lot about real estate, interior design, travel, parenting, health and wellness, business and HR, and career and automotive. But I like to call myself a generalist because I love to do different things every day. I can't imagine doing just one thing. And my background in television has really helped me to become a better writer because I think very visually. So for content marketing, especially, that's proven to be a very good skill because I think a lot of brands need that sort of visual element in their copywriting. So that's really helped me. So I work for a mix of universities, nonprofits, companies, and publications. And it's been a real fun gig for me. I was working full time in television until my son was born in 2005, and then I went back to freelancing as a journalist. So that's what I do, and I will never sit in someone else's office again, ever.
Amen to that. I'm curious because what would you say is the ratio between your journalism work and your content marketing work? Is it 80-20, 50-50?
It's pretty much 50-50. I keep a pie
Okay.
chart every year to track where the money is coming from. And so many people are saying, oh, there's no more work in journalism anymore. It's not true. Maybe you're not looking in the right places, but I'm finding it's pretty much 50-50 these days. And that's the perfect mix for me. I don't want to do more than that in either of those areas. I love the balance because it keeps my brain fresh and it just keeps me energized to just constantly be doing different things.
And are you a generalist in both sides? Meaning, on the journalism side, it sounds like that's definitely very diverse. But on
Yes.
the content marketing side, same level of diversity as well in terms of
Yeah,
industries, topics.
this past fiscal year, my content marketing has leaned heavily into travel, thought leadership, destination, sponsored stories, and those kinds of things, which was surprising to me. But there's a lot of investment in that field. So, all you travel writers out there, if you're not afraid of doing content marketing, there is a ton of work in travel content marketing. I've been fine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, that could be another topic for us to talk
Yeah.
about down the road. All right, so let's talking about travel. The reason we connected is I forget exactly what I posted, but I put this idea out on LinkedIn that hey, as a thought exercise, what if you took 2 or 3 months off at once to as in a sabbatical, for instance, just kind of refresh, especially if you're nearing burnout. I forget the details, but a lot of people were starting to really kind of uh, shoot down this idea, right? I just put it out there. It's just to get people thinking, and you were one of the few lone voices. You said, "Well, actually, I take 4 months off every year." And I've been doing this for a long, long time. And immediately I started realizing, wow, okay, so some people are doing this, even in our line of work. And I'm curious to know a little bit more about how you do this. So when can you take us back to when you made this decision to start taking that kind of time off? Like what drove the decision? And And then how did you make it work like early on?
So, first thing to know is my husband is also a freelancer. He's a sound recordist who works in TV and film. So we are a freelance family. So we have kind of crazy schedules all the time. This taking time off for extended periods began when I had my son, and somebody forwarded me the most depressing article I'd ever read, which was about how every parent only has 18 summers with their child, and then that's it. They're gone, and that's it. It put me into a bit of a panic mode, and I realized my son was a baby. He was about 3 months old. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to make every one of those 18 summers count. I'm going to take all of them off. When he's not in school, I'm not going to work. And I started sitting with that idea and thinking, is this doable? Could I still make a living if I did this? And that's what I started to do. We have a cottage up in the Laurentians in Quebec that's been in my family for many years. And so that first summer with my son, my husband was working, so he joined us when he wasn't shooting. My son and I went up to the cottage and spent the entire summer there. And I did not crack open my laptop. And it was the most transformative experience that I've had in a long time. I realized, wow, this is something I have to make happen every year. And so I sat down that first summer and did some math. How much do I have to make? What happens if I take June through Labor Day off? What does that mean for the rest of the time? How can I manage my income? And I realized that it's actually really doable if you plan it out. Now, hope is not a strategy, wishing is not a strategy. You have to sit
Mhm.
down with an Excel spreadsheet or whatever system you want and figure out how much you have to make to sustain you if you take a certain amount of weeks off. After that first summer, I started realizing I also wanted to take off several weeks at Christmas, several weeks during March break when my son was off school, and every other, professional day where the school was closed and the teachers weren't there, I turned into an adventure day with my son. And before I knew it, I was up to 16 weeks off a year. And yet I was consistently hitting my income goals. And I know there's been a lot of flack on social media lately about people harping on six-figure freelancing and how that shouldn't be a goal. Well, it was a goal for me because I had determined that that's the amount of money I wanted to make in order to pay the bills and live the kind of life I wanted to live. And to my astonishment, taking 16 weeks off did not put any kind of a dent in my income. And the only reason that that happened is because I planned for that. I knew how much I had to make in the weeks and months where I was on duty in order to afford my little sabbaticals throughout the year. And you have to make that happen. You do have to do the math when you make this decision. That's really, really important, is to look at your expenses, look at your budget, and figure out what income has to come in order to make this work for you. You can't just randomly jump off a cliff and take off 4 months and hope that everything's going to fall into place because it
Sure.
won't. It won't.
Well, okay, so that leads to a follow-up question regarding the time when you do work. So if you're essentially taking 4 months where you're making that space, theoretically what happens is there's now 4 months worth of work you're not doing during your break, which now gets shoved into the other 8 months. How did that work? Because I'm wondering if listeners are asking themselves, gosh, the other 8 months, like my whole year is already pretty busy. So to now pack those 8 months with additional work, does that work? Can I make that work, or is that just going to burn me out?
Well, that's the other part of it. I don't generally work nights or weekends during the 8 months where I'm on duty. I think a lot of it is about managing client expectations. And I do have a number of retainer clients that are very well aware of when I take time off. And this is another important point. You can't just announce a week before you're leaving that you're not going to be available. So I, for example, for the biggest chunk of time I take off, which is the summer, I start sending notices to my clients, well, almost right about end of April, to remind them that basically as of mid-June, I'm gone until Labor Day. And so I don't take on any new work starting, let's say, in May. And I'm very clear about when I need revision requests in. And I do not have Wi-Fi at the cottage. That is a hill I will die on, much to my son's chagrin. I do occasionally check email because, stories that you file or deliverables that you send in, you can't just disappear. But I do communicate with clients very early to let them know what my schedule is. And very often something will come through for a semi-regular client or a client I haven't worked with in a long time who will reach out to me during one of the times where I'm away. And I will say to them, I'm off, but I'm available on XX day if you want to wait, or I can refer you to somebody, or I can wish you luck. And many times they're like, no, no, okay, we can wait, we can wait. And so I don't lose the work. And that just gets pushed to when I get home. And as for the times where I am working, you obviously have to figure out your best productivity hacks so that you can get the most done in the hours that you want to work, and not drive yourself crazy. So I've become very good at learning how long things are going to take me. And that's something I see a lot of newer freelancers struggling with. They'll get an
Hmm.
assignment and they have no idea if it's going to take them 2 hours or 2 weeks. You have to know that. You have to know for, let's say, a 1,000 word story with three sources, how long is it going to take you to get from A to B? And everybody's different. So you really have to know what your superpowers are, what your limits are, what your abilities are, so that then you can cram in only as much work as you can reasonably do. I never want to promise more than I can deliver, and I always want to deliver more than I promised. So that kind of gets me onto the mindset of what can I realistically take on that's going to meet my income goals in the time that I have. And that's more math. You have to track your
Yes.
time. You have to track your time on certain types of assignments so that you know that, I do a lot of marketing material for the National Film Board of Canada. I know exactly how long it takes me when they want me to prepare a package for a new animated feature that they're sending to the Oscars. I have it down to a science, and that's a very big part of the puzzle. If you don't know how long things take you, start by tracking your hours and figuring it out so you can take a look. Oh, I can take on this many features, that many copywriting projects, this many marketing bundles, whatever it is that you want to do. You can have an idea of how long it's going to take you. And then you can slot it into the time that you have available. And guess what? You may have more work than you have time for. And so you have to make decisions. Which clients am I going to prioritize? Obviously, the great ones that pay quickly, but you have to make those kinds of decisions all the way through.
So I wanted to point out two things. First of all, you're the second person that I interview on this podcast about taking extended time off, but the other example was very different from you, the totally different situation. If one, there have been a few common themes. One of them is the whole math, just doing the math and then planning and strategizing and not just kind of making this up. That is a very consistent theme, a very important one. The second one, which is kind of subtext, is this idea that when you create an intention and you move forward in faith toward that intention and that goal, the answers start surfacing. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm hearing from you, that once you made that decision, you made that declaration. And of course, there was this math and the planning and the brainstorming. Things just kind of had a way of working out. Like you were able to make it work, not magically, but you're able to. I think constraints are a really important thing in our lives because they force us to make better decisions. I think when we have too much time, too many resources, we waste so much of it. But if suddenly we got to get this done because we got 8 months to get it done, and instead of 12, we just magically make it happen. We become more effective, more productive, more focused. So that's another thing I just wanted to underscore that I'm hearing from you, which really resonates with me.
Hmm. Well, I mentioned to you when we first started chatting that I really believe in that whole cliche of putting on your own oxygen mask first before you can help somebody else. I think that
Yes.
so many writers are either on the brink or in the full throttles of burnout. And that is caused by running on fumes and not keeping your glass full. And it's so important to take the time that you need to recharge your batteries and find the things that bring you joy. Because if you don't do that and all you do is chase after, the next client, the next assignment, the next invoice, um, it's not sustainable as a way of life, and you're not going to be any good to your clients, to your family, to your partner, to your children, to your friends, if you have no energy in reserve. And what I have found is taking those 16 weeks off in various chunks throughout the year. Sometimes it's just a long weekend, sometimes it's 3 months altogether, has really replenished my cup and has really helped me refocus what's important in my life. And I think that's something that's sadly missing when people go freelance. And let's be honest, with all the media layoffs, there's more and more and more people every day that suddenly find themselves freelancing, and they're operating from a place of fear, and they're worried, they're terrified, they're not going to be able to pay their bills or, support their children or whatever their goals are. I'm here to say that there is a way to make an excellent living as a freelance writer while also avoiding burnout. I mean, it really is possible, but you have to make the decision that that's what you're going to do. It does not just happen. If you allow things to be decided for you, then you're going to be working 7 days a week and bringing your laptop to the beach. That's just what's going to happen to you. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You used a word that that's really important right now, and that's fear. Right, fear is driving so many decisions for freelancers right now. Can you talk a little bit more about that and your experience with fear and how it's led you down the wrong path, and then how doing what you've been doing for the past 18 years has really brought down kind of that fear mindset?
So I'll start by telling you that, I make a pie chart every year to see how many clients I've worked with, what kind of work I was doing, and I look at the percentages. And my year end is April 30th, and I took a look last week and realized that I had lost 9 clients this year. Oh my
Mm.
God, isn't that terrifying? But you know what? I got 8 new ones. So it's really not the end of the world because I balanced that out. I am not afraid of not finding work. I think there's never been more work. I think that with every brand and organization and university now being a publisher, if you're a writer, everybody needs your services. And so you really start to have to change your mindset about who needs the talents that I have. And there's lots of wonderful people out there that have great exercises of how you can find more clients. I'm thinking of my good friend Jennifer Goforth Gregory has some fantastic exercises. One of her best things that I'll never forget is, oh, you write about parenting? Great. Grab a parenting magazine, flip through, and every time you get to an ad, go send a letter of introduction to that company. They need writers. They probably have a blog. And I mean, right there, you're going to come up with a list of 40 or 50 clients that you can pitch to. I waste as much time as everybody else. I'm guilty of procrastinating, but I have a little trick. I give myself permission to procrastinate if I do a marketing task. I'm actually constantly marketing, not just in the 8 months where I'm working, but all the time. I'm always talking to people, thinking of story ideas, looking for new pathways of places that could potentially need my services. And I give myself permission to procrastinate on a task that I'm working on if I send a letter of introduction or pitch a story or make a LinkedIn connection, something that's going to further my business. And I would argue that if you're not marketing every day, you're leaving money on the table. I can't tell you how many times a simple note to connect on LinkedIn has led to thousands of dollars worth of work, and it took 10 seconds of my time. You really have to understand that money is going to come to you, but only if you scatter a lot of seeds. So be a gardener. Just throw out heaps and heaps of flower seeds. Lots of them are just going to blow away in the wind, but there's lots of them that are going to root. And the way to stave off the fear, that scarcity mindset, is to keep scattering those seeds. If you keep scattering the seeds, I guarantee you, it's a numbers game. It will come back to you. You will find projects that take root. But if you're just sitting around fretting and complaining that there's not enough work and that another magazine has folded, or a company has ghosted you, you're not going to get anywhere. Just move on. Those 9 clients I lost, well, the budget's dried up, their direction shifted, my contact got fired, whatever the reason was, doesn't matter. You have to replace those clients. So you have to keep throwing those seeds out. That's how I deal with the fear. I just use my gardening skills.
I love that. What percentage, if you had to guess, of your ability to take this time off every year is dependent on your consistency and quality of marketing?
Wow. I'm going to say all of it because I know that I can't take 16 weeks off if I don't hit my income goal. And I have projections. I see month to month what's coming, what's not coming. If a upcoming month looks light, I will double down on my marketing efforts to make sure for people that don't know that are aspiring to earn six figures in a year, you have to make $8,333 over the 12 months. Well, if you're only working 8 months, guess what that means? Some of those months are going to look like a lot more than 8,300. You're going to have to
Yeah,
double
you got
up.
to make up, what is that, like $33,000 or so that
Exactly.
you have
So
or now have to flow into your 8 months.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I am certainly no math whiz, but in that Excel projection spreadsheet that I have, which I have named on the books, there's a calculation that's showing me how off I am, how far away I am from my income goal and how many months I have left to get there. So it's not like I'm going to punish myself and say, oh, you can't go to the cottage to ski for 2 weeks over Christmas because you didn't make your money. I don't do that. But I just know that over those 8 months, I have to reach those income figures. And so I take as much as I can realistically do in those times and market like crazy if I see things are getting a bit low. So, it goes hand in hand. You have to figure out how much time things take for you to do, and you have to keep marketing to make sure the work keeps coming in.
Yeah, I posted the other day on LinkedIn that, and I was conservative. I said 80% of your success and happiness are directly impacted by your marketing consistency, something to that effect. And I know that, right now people don't want to hear that. I think right now people want to hear that it's okay and, it's not you, it's the economy, it's this and then the other, but nobody wants to take ownership. I shouldn't say nobody. A lot of people don't want to take ownership. What I'm hearing from you is you've taken charge, you've taken ownership, you've declared this is what I'm going to do. And in order to make that happen, I need to then reverse engineer what I need to do to
Hmm.
make it happen. And the
Hmm.
lead domino here is marketing. That's what I'm hearing. If that's the lead domino, the other pieces can start falling into place, which enables me to have this more balanced, richer life.
Right. And I think it's important to point out, Ed, that marketing can take many, many, many forms. If
Of
I had to
course.
pick one chain, one path that leads me to the most work, it's referrals from other writers. So if you're terrified of marketing, if you're an introvert and you think that you can't send out cold emails and you can't call people and you can't strike up a conversation at an in-person conference, then go to your tribe and make connections with your peers and let them know what you do and tell them that you're open for referrals and that you're happy to refer them. One of my longest anchor clients that I've been writing for since 2014 came from a referral from another writer. Um, that's how it works. So it's not just about, lurking on LinkedIn, but you've got to go to writers' conferences. You've got to talk to people when you're out. You've got to make mastermind groups with some peers where you maybe have a meeting every 2 weeks and check in with each other and share leads and those kinds of things. There's a lot of different ways to market that aren't nearly as painful as writers think they are. You just have to turn it into a bit of a game. I think gamification works. If you have
Mm-hmm.
to, make a little chart for yourself and say for every 10 marketing efforts, you're going to give yourself a little treat. Some people need to bribe themselves. Try that if you can't motivate yourself. It's really, really important, and everything counts. You never know where your next client is coming from.
I want to go back to a couple of things you had mentioned. One of them was the fact that you give plenty of notification to clients. Okay, so which is great. So there's a lot of planning that goes into this. But you also mentioned that you have several retainer clients. So I'm just curious about in a retainer situation, when you're going to be gone for, let's say in the summer, that seems to be your biggest extended period, right? When
Hmm.
you're off,
Hmm.
you're going to be gone for 2, 3 months. How does that work in a retainer situation? Do you hit pause, obviously on the billing, but what about the work? Is that also paused completely and then they make do on their own? Do they find someone who could help them for 2 or 3 months while you're gone? Or do you basically get the work done ahead of time so that during those 2 or 3 months, nothing happens?
Yes, I front load. So for stuff that I know is recurring, I will say to a client, listen, for example, one of my clients is a CN Railroad, and I do profiles of different railroaders, and it's on a quarterly basis. And I already know today the ones for May and June. So I'm getting those done this week. So I'm going to say to them, if there's any way you can give me the next quarter so that I can get them done before June 10th, bring them on and you'll have them, and those will run during the summer. So that's an easy thing. There's some client I like to work with clients that are organized,
I
Ed.
was going to say that requires
Let's just
planning on their end.
there's a
Okay. Yeah.
caveat there. If most of your clients are, last minute loosies who are just going to throw things at you because they don't know where they're going, this might not work. But for clients where you can actually say to them, I'd like to front load as much as possible. I have another client, Garden Weasel Tools. I write a lot of gardening blog posts for them. Those I can do whenever I want. So if they run monthly, I can just do three of them before I leave, fit them in anytime between now and June 10th, and I'm done for the summer. So I do try to do those kinds of things. There's other recurring clients that are much more last minute, and unfortunately, in those situations, I have to say no because I'm not going to suddenly whip up my laptop at the lake and start working on a last minute project because so and so wasn't organized enough. So I have to make peace with the fact that they're going to have to go to another writer for that. And I'm frankly, I'm okay with that. I have yet to have turned down an assignment in 18 years where I look back and say, oh, I wish I had done that instead of that 2 hour kayaking adventure I had with my family. Never, never. There are no assignments where I am going to be filled with remorse. I'm just not in that place in my life where I'm going to regret those kinds of things. There's always going to be another opportunity. And quite frankly, if you are in that big time away and your dream client comes up with something that you can't turn down and you really want to do it, then do it. The sky's not going to fall in. I just don't want to do that. I want to have that time scot-free. But you may decide you're going to take 8 weeks off, but 1 week in there, you're going to say yes to a dream client. That's okay too. Again, it's what works for you.
Tell me a little bit about what you do. Um, let's start with the summer months. You go up to the cottage. How do you spend, and I'm sure this has changed as your son has grown up, right? But how do you spend that time? What do you do? And do you ever find yourself getting a little itchy about work? Do you ever find like I got to do something? I got to do something work related.
Never, not once. What do I do? I love to garden. We have a big garden up there. I spend a lot of time gardening. We love to go out on the boat. We're on the water. I love to just, watch my son fish. We go hiking. I love to bake and cook, so I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I love to read. We love to catch up on movies and have fires outside, bonfires at night when the mosquitoes are gone. Um, One thing I have found though is that when you free your mind to relax like that, it's amazing how many great ideas you get. So I do write a lot of things down. I may get a story idea. I may meet somebody at the grocery store in the village that sparks a story idea. So I write it down. I don't pitch it, but I write it
Just
down.
write it down.
I
Yeah.
just put it in my phone or I scribble it in a notebook and I put it aside. Or I make lists of people that I want to follow up with or places I want to go and pitch story, travel story ideas. But that's about as much work in quotes as I'll do. If something comes into my mind, if a thought comes in, I will welcome it, I will write it down, I will put it away. I will certainly not feel compelled to run to my laptop and write up a pitch and send it to a magazine. That I won't do.
Do you journal while you're there as well? Not work stuff, but just
No, I used to, but I don't journal. I actually I find it incredibly liberating to just spend as much time outdoors in nature, even if I'm just staring at the water, sitting on the dock and staring at the water. 4 hours can pass and I don't get bored. I watch the ducks. I get a lot of pleasure of watching the ducks on my lake. I really do. It sounds crazy to a lot of people because actually I'm a very type A personality. When I'm on duty, and I keep going back to that phrase, when I'm on duty and I'm working, I am very productive. I'm very focused. I'm very obsessed with getting all my work done. But boy, when I'm off duty, I am all in with the off duty.
Did you was that a process, or did you find yourself you were really good about flipping that switch from day one?
I think at the beginning, when I just took the summers off, when you have a baby or a toddler, you certainly don't have a lot of time for reflection. It's just really, really busy. And yet it was a lot of fun. And over the following years, when I kept adding more and more and more and more time off, it became more intentional. And I think it was a process in the sense of I'm not somebody that gets bored easily. I really don't need a lot to entertain myself, and I really have taken a lot of pleasure in very small things in life. I mean, when you wake up and you can listen to the birds, there's a mother robin that makes a nest under our balcony at the cottage for the last 10 summers or so. She's 10 springs. She's made her nest. And I can't tell you how much fun it is for me to watch her standing guard in the grass and watch her check her babies and watch them hatch. I mean, that's something like 15 or 20 years ago, if somebody would have said, I would have really gotten a kick out of that. I would have rolled my eyes. But that's really, I've come to appreciate a lot of the smaller things in life because I've allowed myself to slow down. I think we miss so much. Look, the eclipse was a perfect example. So many people stopped what they were doing, joined a bunch of strangers out in the street, and looked up at the sky and had a really amazing experience. And it made them realize how important it is sometimes to just stop what you're doing and be in the moment. And that's sort of become a bit of a philosophy for me with my work and my life.
With so summer is your biggest time off. I think you
Mhm.
said you take some time during spring break in March.
Yep.
You take a month off
At Christmas.
or
Yep.
at Christmas.
Mhm.
What are some of the other periods that are, pretty much recurring every year?
So my husband's shooting schedule is usually 4 days a week. So whenever he has a Friday off, I take a long weekend off too, and I won't work Fridays. I know a lot of freelancers that don't work Fridays, by the way. That
I
is
don't.
a that
Yeah,
is a big thing. And that's a great way to start. Start by
yeah.
giving yourself long weekends and see if you can do that, and then give yourself a 4 day weekend and see what happens. And you don't have to just decide you're going to take 4 months off. You can do it in increments. And so that's what I started to do. I will take the occasional day off. If again, like my son is now in college, so he doesn't have this anymore, but all through elementary school and high school, if he had a day off from school on a Wednesday, we'd have an adventure day. So those, once a month days, just I added them to my days off. And it's been fantastic because you have to make plans for those days, by the way. Give yourself something to look forward to so that that gives you a sense of purpose as well. Whether it's planning a hike or a picnic or a day, at a flea market, or just going kayaking or going to see a friend or going to spend time with your parents. Have a plan for that time off because that is part of the joy and part of the cup filling experience. Don't just sleep in until noon and sit around, in your pajamas watching TV all the time. You can do that sometimes, but you can't do 16 weeks of that.
No, and I found the same thing. My wiring is such that if I don't plan something, I will walk around mindlessly, and then there's a danger that I'll end up doing some work, which I have done.
Uh-huh.
So I like this weekend, I'm going camping. Friday through Sunday, I'm leaving early Friday morning. So I need to do things like that in
Hmm.
order for the accountability, I
Yep.
guess. And so that I don't just waste a day, because I've wasted, even if it's not work, I've just kind of, like you said, there's still value in puttering it around, puttering and just
Yep.
thinking, just laying there, watching the water, the lake, that's fine. But on a Friday, I find that I need to do a little bit of planning. Let's talk a little bit about. I want to come back just briefly to the finances. We don't need to talk numbers in here, but can I assume that essentially what you're doing is you're essentially building up your buffers so that you could drain that and live off of that during the months when you're not working? Is that typically how it works?
Yeah, that's basically it. So it goes back to knowing what your expenses are, and trying to keep your expenses low so that you're not just working to pay off your very expensive shoe buying habit. For example,
Yeah,
you try to have a mindset where, okay, what needs to go out and what needs to come in, and keep in mind my husband and I are both freelancers. So we both have, for lack of a better term, a non-steady job. Of course, now we know in the world there's no such thing as a secure job
it's not.
anyways. But
No, but your income is variable.
yeah,
Technically
it's
speaking, it is
variable, and
variable.
we have to know, okay, how many months is he working? How much do I have to work? How are we going to figure this out? And that's what we do. It's just a constant sort of readjustment and juggling act. And I think it's important, for me, I don't think I would take 4 months off consecutively. For me, I need to plan it throughout the year because that's what works for me. I like to sort of do it in fits and starts. I like to work and then take time off and then work and take time off. Back in the days where I worked in television as a producer, I had the same schedule as my husband. I would be shooting and then off. And often when you work in production, you work crazy, crazy hours, 16 hours a day, but then you have 3 months off. So that I was sort of used to that stop and start kind of lifestyle anyway, and it melds very well with what I'm doing now. So I look ahead and I think, okay, if I want to be off, June 10th, I better make sure that I'm making this much in March, April, May, and then that I have stuff lined up for September through December. And that's what you kind of have to work towards. And some things are already going to be there if you have anchor clients. Other things you say, well, I've got to pick up some more work here and there, and buff those months up so that I can, like you said, drain them later. That's the plan.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. I'm curious if you have started to think about the next phase of this idea. So obviously your son is now in college, and you're entering a new phase of your life, if you want to use that as a milestone, right? Have
Mhm.
you thought a little bit more about, hey, what might this look like over the next 10 years or so? How will this evolve?
So I think what's going to happen is that those 16 weeks are going to slowly start growing until they resemble a type of semi-retirement, I guess. I'm
Mhm.
I'm not really interested in retiring just yet. I feel like as long as I can keep the kind of pace in my life where I have enough time to seek joy and do the things I want to do and travel and be with my family, I'm very happy to keep working on projects that I want to work on. And I think it's really important here to say, don't work for clients that are going to burn you out. Don't work for clients that aren't going to bring you joy. I think a lot of the stress that freelancers take on that make them want to dream of retiring or leaving the profession and doing something else is because the people that they're working with just bring them aggravation and dread. So I have learned over the years to get rid of those kinds of clients. You're allowed to fire a client. I'm giving you permission. If they don't pay you well, if they don't pay you promptly, if they don't value you, you don't need them. Replace them with somebody that does. And then if you're working with good clients, you want to keep working with them. And as I move slowly, slowly towards this semi-retirement phase down the road, I'm just going to keep the very best of the best of the best clients that I love, um, until I don't want to work anymore. That's the plan.
I love that because you're absolutely right. I feel like the story about retirement that we've all been sold is based on an old paradigm of people working in a job they hated with people they hate, until they can't take it anymore. They need the rest. They're so burnt out. They need a break from that. But when we're self-employed, we have the control to decide who we work with, what kind of work we do. I'm a big believer, like you, that you should create the kind of situation that you don't need to run away from.
Hmm.
And that's a very powerful thing. But the reason I asked this question is because, in a way, you've lived such a balanced life that I was curious about your perspective. When you don't feel like you're burnt out, that you need a break from that, what does the second half of your life look like? And I'm happy to hear that you enjoy your work so much that you're in no hurry to necessarily go take a break and just retire from it all.
I think, one of my favorite editors, Richard Eisenberg, who is he's coining the phrase unretirement because he left his full-time job as an editor at PBS and is now freelancing and living his unretired life. And he's writing a lot about that. And it's really resonating with me because I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, have an idea of retirement that just doesn't make sense for our generation at all. And I think that you have to have something to go to. And for a lot of people, if you love what you're doing and there's no reason for you to stop doing it, and you can make your own hours, choose your clients and the type of work you want to do, why wouldn't you want to keep your hand in it as long as you love it and still want to do it? So that's what I see happening. I see myself continuing along this path until it turns out that maybe I'm only working 16 weeks a year and the rest I'm off. I don't know. But for now, I'm really happy with this pace. It's the perfect amount of time off. Some years it's a little more than 16 weeks, some years it's a little bit less. It depends. And I don't hold myself to this iron schedule. Sometimes my summer will start June 1st and sometimes it'll start June 29th. It depends. It just depends on what's going on with the rest of our family. So, I think you can be flexible. And I think that's the best part of freelancing is that you're in charge. You're in charge of your destiny. You're in charge of your finances. You're in charge of the projects you take, and you're in charge of your schedule. And that to me is just glorious. And I think it's so important to focus on that part of it, that you really have to be at ease with the pace that you're setting for yourself. And I would argue that most freelancers are not. They're either completely stressed and burned out, or they're not working enough and they're terrified that they're not going to make their mortgage payments. And both of those are not the way to live.
Well, it leads back to what you started with, which is you have to treat what you do as a business. You have to run it as a business. You have to operate as you have to think of it as a business. And that's been the common theme of everyone who has real choices and freedom in what they do. They all have that in common, including you. So kudos to you for for doing that, because that is the start of everything. You said something to me in an email. We had a couple of email exchanges, and I want to, as we start wrapping up, I kind of want you to maybe touch on this a little bit. It's kind of self-explanatory, but it's so important. You said, my best tip is if you want something badly enough, you'll find a way to make it happen. Trust me. Speak to that a little bit. I know, we've kind of touched on that indirectly, but when it comes to creating this kind of lifestyle,
I
is
think
that true for everybody?
I think it should be. I think that once you've really dug deep and figured out what is important to you, you will reevaluate everything around you. Um, my husband had a health scare 5 years ago that completely changed the universe for me and made me realize even more that we have to live for today. And we have no idea what's going to come for tomorrow, but we can project. And for me, when I say, if you want something badly enough, you'll figure out a way to get it, that means that you have to do your math, do your planning, do your thinking, figure out who you are, what you want, and then look at the different pathways to get to that goal. Whether it's losing 10 pounds, learning how to play the guitar, or, starting a new side hustle. Hope is not a strategy. You have to sit down and say, what are the different ways that I can get from 0 to 1 and take that first step forward? If you want to take more time off in your year, then take a look at a calendar, block out some time and make that happen. Highlight it in bright yellow as untouchable and figure out a way to work around it so those weeks happen. Start small. You don't have to start with 4 months. Start small, see what works for you, but prioritize the things that bring you joy. If you decide that you want to take up a new sport, you have to sign up for that class and learn how to do it, or join a recreational ice hockey league, or whatever it is that you want to do. It's not going to happen if you don't take a concrete step. So take that first step and the rest will follow. I think that people who give up too easily, and it's really interesting when I mentor new writers, or I give workshops and I talk to writers later, the ones that are struggling all have the same problem. It's all in their mindset, and they need to get out of their own way. If you decide you're going to be successful, money is going to come to you. If you decide that you want to take off family vacations and not bring your laptop to the beach, leave it at home and just don't pack it. I mean, just do it. You can't just hope for things. You have to actually take a step. And if something that you try doesn't work for you, guess what? As a freelancer, you get to press reset and do something different. So, there's a lot of trial and error involved here to figure out what the right balance is for you and for your business and for your family. But I guarantee you, if you want something and it's really important to you, the only person who can make it happen is you. Nobody's going to do it for you. So you have to have the strength and the persistence and the resourcefulness to just do it. Period.
I'm inspired. I this is you speak so much truth, and I'm glad you're saying it, because this is a message that needs to be heard. So thank
Mhm.
you. In Wendy, thank you for sharing your precious time with us, and your story, and your advice, and your wisdom. So I appreciate you coming on.
It's my pleasure. And I think this is really important information for freelancers in all kinds of fields, not just writers. I think the word free is really important in there. You are free to do what you want and make your own rules. And you just have to have the confidence to do it. And I'm giving everyone that confidence today, because everyone can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm not special. I just made some decisions and moved forward, and anyone can do what I do.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So if anyone wants to learn more about you, connect with you, where should I send them?
I'm happy to share my email. It's Wendy at take2productions.ca, and you just spell it out. And I'm always happy to talk to new writers or people who are struggling with their scheduling and their client load. There's always a way out. You're not trapped. There's always a way forward. You just have to figure out what the right path is for you, because everybody is different.
Well, thanks again, Wendy. I appreciate you.
It was my pleasure. It was great to talk to you, Ed.